Hey everybody, Foley here. Welcome to the weekly news recap for the 5th to the 11th of May 2025. This week, you've already seen the GTA 6 trailer. I really don't think we need to go over that. So if you somehow haven't, and the stats would suggest that you have, it's got like several million views at this point. Anyway, we're going to look at a different game that is occasionally compared to Grand Theft Auto. This is Mafia, the old country. Had been teased a while ago by 2K. In fact, it's the same company. Take-Two own 2K as well, don't they? That's kind of weird. Anyway, we're seeing a little bit more of the gameplay now, and it does look like they're going for actually a much smaller game than Mafia 3 and maybe Mafia 2 as well. The older Mafia games were sort of trying to turn into a Grand Theft Auto alike. The original Mafia was more of a level-based game, a level-structured game. And Mafia 2 had some additional like side content and like a pseudo open world kind of thing, and then Mafia 3 went the full open world GTA clone effectively. And it does seem like Mafia the Old Country is going, if anything, Uncharted a little bit. This it does it kind of has the feel of an old school PS2 PS3 action adventure type game. But it definitely has like the nice over-the-shoulder stuff that you've seen in the more recent Resident Evils, Alone in the Darks, and so on. This is the kind of game that I actually would be interested in playing. And if they were going to go for a GTA clone, I can't say I would have felt the same. Because I'm a little bored of big open world games at this point, and if GTA is going out soon enough, I don't want to be super burnt out when it does. So somewhat both surprised and also like I don't know, pleasantly surprised that Mafia the Old Country isn't going for the giant 400-hour game. It does seem like they're going for the a much smaller, much shorter game. From some of the developer interview stuff that came along with this trailer, they're talking about how the game is going to be much smaller in scope. It's not going to be, I forget the way they described it now. It was something respect your time. I forget exactly the exact wording they used. And it's also not going to be like a full price $70, $80 game. I think they're aiming for $40 or $50. So yeah, maybe not the big sprawling game that people were expecting. And I don't know if that's something Mafia fans wanted, because Mafia 3 I don't think was particularly well received by Mafia fans. It wasn't particularly well received critically. I think it was just it's fine, it's okay. And I really do think it was aiming to be a GTA clone rather than sticking with what the original Mafia was supposed to be, which is really more of a level-based tight story game. And that does seem like what they're going for with Mafia the Old Country. Anyway, August, some stage, 8th of August, I think is what it was at the end. Did I skip too far? I did. Skip too far again. I should just stop skipping and just let it play. Yeah, 8th of August for Mafia the Old Country, coming to basically everything again except the Switch. Okay, then we had a couple of new games announced. So this is I Am Ripper. This is from the developers behind, I think it's Ether 1 and The Occupation, I think is their other game, which are kind of, well, Ether 1 is very much a walking sim. And The Occupation, I think, had a bit more of like a tense atmosphere to it. I don't quite remember the game that well. But I Am Ripper seems to be a kind of, it's set some stage in the 80s, I think, 70s or 80s. And there's an idea of there's a serial killer on the loose, the Ripper, as you might imagine. And like the game is essentially like a detective type thing. So it could still end up being a kind of Ether 1 puzzly walking sim thing, but with like horror connotations to it, thriller connotations to it, and so on. It's looking impressive, I think, certainly from the trailer. And okay, that looked a bit weird, but otherwise it seems to have looked fine. I don't believe there's like a release date or anything for it yet. There's also this guy who's being drowned in a glass coffin, which is New fear unlocked. That's something. Anyway, yeah. So there's no release date or anything. Aiming for PC right now. White paper games. That's who it is. We have another one, which is essentially, well, it's not exactly the complete opposite, but this is Pigface. Pigface, I believe, is a solo dev job, but it is being. They are partnering with somebody for the publishing. I forget who's doing the publishing now. The idea with Pigface is kind of the old Manhunt games you may remember. Something Rockstar were doing at the same time they were doing Grand Theft Auto. Is Manhunt them, or is it a different developer? I think Manhunt is a different developer, but it always got lumped in with GTA because they were both sort of terrible for the kids kind of thing. Anyway, Dread XP, who's working on, is the publisher for Pigface. So the idea with it is you are playing a not particularly nice person who has been recruited, shall we say, by Pigface, and it is now your task to go kill a bunch of other not so nice people, basically. So it is billed as a ultra-violent Twitch shooter kind of thing. So, coming from the slow pace of I Am Ripper and then moving into Pigface, which seems to be a much faster paced game. Yeah, it seems interesting. I'm kind of hoping it's not like a procedurally generated thing and there is like a story element to it. We'll see. It does have some kind of Hotline Miami vibes to it as well. But I don't think it's that kind of... Like, Hotline Miami is in some ways almost a puzzle game that's trying to figure out how to get through the level without getting killed. Whereas this seems more of like a run and gun shooter. Moving on, Hawthorne. So Hawthorne had been announced a while ago. And this is more kind of reminding you about the game and also announcing the Kickstarter for the game. So Hawthorne is kind of a survival crafting type game. You have seen several 100 million of them on Steam probably at this point. What's supposed to set Hawthorne apart is that you are playing like creatures effectively, so you're not playing like human beings or whatever. I don't know why it is that the mouse or the rat is wearing clothes but nobody else is. It's like, do the rats understand the concept of modesty but an otter doesn't? I don't know how that works. Anyway, it is, I believe, like a multiplayer thing where you all kind of set up in this area and build your houses and farm and all of that business. There does appear to be some kind of dungeon crawling element to it. Again, why is the rat wearing clothes and nobody else is? I didn't even think about this when I was watching the trailer, and I thought, like, why? Like, I can't imagine wearing clothes would help the owl fly or the otter swim and so on and so forth, but it's kind of weird that only one of them is wearing clothes. Yeah, I also saw this in the trailer. Please show me how the owl uses the crossbow. I want to know. I want to see the owl use the crossbow, and he doesn't. That's the annoying part. Anyway, it's still not clear how the multiplayer element plays in. Can you play the whole thing solo? The story seems to be the idea of the creatures returning to this area, and there is fae folk, I think, is kind of the tease here at the end, that might be living in the area as well, and there might be some kind of conflict between them. It's possible that players only play as the rat or the mouse, and maybe the owl and the otter are more of an NPC thing. Anyway, it is on Kickstarter right now if you are interested, and might get more information than I gave you, because I'm only going based on the trailer. I haven't actually checked out the Kickstarter yet myself. Anyway, moving on. We have a couple of games who have some release dates. So Chronicles of the Wolf is out some stage in June, I think. So this is a game that is very much going for the Castlevania Simon's Quest revitalization, no? Revamp? Remaster? Whatever you're going for. Anyway, it's Castlevania, but, not Castlevania. And obviously going for the Simon's Quest thing, which had a little bit more of an RPG element to it. It kind of had a hub world with the village, and you could go back and buy things. It had a day-night cycle. Quests would change depending on, day and night and stuff like that. It actually had, quite an ambitious game, even if it maybe didn't set the world on fire for Castlevania fans. Anyway, I don't know, is Simon's Quest well regarded by Castlevania fans or not? I feel like it should be because of how ambitious it was, really. Anyway, this is from a developer who had in the past made like tons of Castlevania fan games, like loads of them, and now they're just went ahead and did what I would suggest a lot of people who make fan games and fan mods and whatever is just make your own game, because you're gonna just get cease and desisted anyway. So you might as well just make your own thing. And having a crossover with Bloodstained is kind of the seal of approval, really, from Igarashi, the Bloodstained creator and Symphony of the Night Castlevania dev, principal dev even. That's a good seal of approval to have there. Anyway, so June 19th for Chronicles of the Wolf, and it's coming to basically everything. There's a demo available right now if you want to check it out. And the other game that has a release date is a game that I'm really excited to play. I don't know if everybody else is. Spray Paint Simulator. And I have mentioned on the channel before that I really like Power Wash Simulator. I just find it cathartic to clean all the stuff. I don't know. It's tickles that side of my brain, I will say. And Spray Paint Simulator is effectively the same thing, really. So sure, why not? It's just another set of things to spray. Spraying water and now I'm spraying paint instead. Is it really any different? Who knows? Anyway, this is, I think, July for Spray Paint Simulator. No, the opposite way around, May. So 29th of May for Spray Paint Simulator. It will be a day one thing on Game Pass, but it is also coming to PC on Steam and PlayStation. And that also has a demo available if you want to check that out. Free games over on the Epic Games Store. We have Dead Time Defenders, which looks like a kind of single-player Castle Crashers. So it does look like it's a kind of dimension hopping kind of thing. It plays a little bit like Castle Crashers, but I think it's more of a ranged shooter type rather than like a melee game. And it doesn't look like it's multiplayer. I think it is like a single player thing. But you're jumping into worlds, collecting loot, making your guy better, and then jumping into worlds again to rinse and repeat, effectively. That's Dead Time Defenders. And then Touch Type Tail is a typing RTS. So instead of using your mouse to do everything and clicking how many clicks a second you can get and so on, no, you have to type. You have to type everything in. Teach you typing, and if you like RTSs, maybe this is a good way to do it for you. How big of a pain in the ass it will become eventually when you have to type everything, that's up to you, I suppose. Sometimes it really is just easier to just click on things. Anyway, that's Touch Type Tail. Coming to the beginning of the month, or the second week of the month, so the Xbox Game Pass is getting its first wave of games. It's pretty good this month. You've Doom the Dark Ages, which has been getting a bunch of early reviews. It seems that id were very confident in Doom, because the reviews are out for it and the game isn't out until Tuesday, I think. And the reviews are pretty glowing overall. I think there's one or two issues that people aren't especially happy about, but overall seems like it they've nailed it. We will talk more about Doom the Dark Ages next week when its actual release is out, and potentially I've had a chance to play it. Revenge of the Savage Planet, also out this week. We will talk more about it in the new releases section. Culebra, The Souls of Limbo, is kind of an indie game. So it is sort of... It's a bit like Spiritfarer, I guess, in a way. So you are helping like the souls in Limbo move on to the afterlife, and there's something that's keeping them there in Limbo, and you kind of have to talk to them and figure out what it is and help them with their issues and what have you, not unlike Spiritfarer. The only difference is you're not on a boat. Basically, you're just in a village or whatever, in an area. There is a demo available for it. I think it's good. I liked it. Then we have Dragon Ball 2, or Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2. I mean, if you're a big Dragon Ball guy and you like the Dragon Ball games, you almost certainly knew this was coming out anyway, so I feel like I don't need to say anything more. TMNT, Mutants Unleashed. I don't really know anything about that. I think it is like a film tie-in, but I have to admit I am not 100% sure what kind of game it is. Unless it's the So there was a Turtles game that I'm not sure if it came out with the film, but it was kind of a mobile game that sort of played a bit like Hades. And I think this might be like the console version of it. Hang on, we'll check in the blurb at the bottom anyway. Firefighting simulator. Seems straightforward, honestly. Police simulator. I'm not sure I really want to do that one. Warhammer 40k. Vermintide. Actually, it mightn't be 40k, considering the guy's face. It's probably just regular Warhammer. It is just regular Warhammer. Vermintide. Also coming to you. So all of those are in Ultimate and PC Game Pass. So a few of those are day ones. Doom the Dark Ages, Revenge of the Savage Planet, Kulebra, Souls of Limbo. I know all of those three are at least are day ones. I'm not sure about the Dragon Ball game, the Turtles game, or the firefighting simulator. Vermintide's been out a while, so that's probably not. Anyway, then moving into the standard Game Pass. So Dungeons of Hinterberg is a pretty interesting kind of cross between lifestyle sim stuff. So think the village side of Stardew Valley, you know, getting to know people and talking to them and making friends and kind of thing. And then, as the name would suggest, there's a dungeon crawling element to it. The kind of gist of the game is that you've gone to Hinterberg, which is a kind of almost like holiday destination for people to do dungeon crawling. Which admittedly sounds odd, but that's within the universe of the game. That's like a popular tourist thing to do. Then Flintlock: The Siege of Dawn, I think, started out as kind of a Soulsy type game and then sort of changed to a more modern God of War type game instead. It is sort of set in and around the time of the American Revolution, but in this universe, like, the gods are very real. They are in charge of everybody, ruling as tyrants, and you're fighting back against them. But the technology you have at hand is like flintlocks, as the game might suggest. You've got like a tomahawk. You have this dog, cat, carbuncle thing following you around that has magic powers and stuff like that. So it's not exactly a history lesson. But it's okay. It's decent. Metal Slug Tactics. You might recall the old Metal Slug games, which were side-scrolling shoot-em-ups. Really hard shoot-em-ups, and like good, but really hard. Metal Slug Tactics is effectively an XCOM version of it, and also decent. So, like, as I said, the Game Pass this month is pretty good. Now, what is the Turtles game? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutants Unleashed, Join the Turtle Brothers. This isn't going to tell me what kind of game it is it? No. It doesn't tell you what kind of game it is. Anyway, it's Vermintide 2. That might actually be a new game. I'm not sure. Anyway, that's Game Pass. Moving on, those are some of the games you can play soon. And in the case of Revenge of the Savage Planet, you can play it right now. But what if you want to play something right now? Well, you can play Revenge of the Savage Planet, which is available on Xbox Game Pass as well. So Revenge of the Savage Planet is a sequel to Journey to the Savage Planet. So this is by Raccoon Logic. So there's a bit of it, like a history for Raccoon Logic. They were originally a developer, created Journey to the Savage Planet. I forget the name of their original team. They were bought by Google to become a first-party Google Stadia developer, effectively. And we know what happened with Google Stadia, which is effectively nothing. We were dismissed, obviously, by Google because Google decided not to develop any games and then very quickly decided not to make Stadia a thing anymore. And Revenge of the Savage Planet is very much the opposite of a love letter to their time with Google and how kind of shit they were treated and stuff like that. So there's a lot of anti-corporate stuff in the background of the game, despite it being and looking like a kind of slapstick comedy in some ways. It is very much a big middle finger to Google, but also the video game industry in general. Anyway, that's Revenge of the Savage Planet. Journey to the Savage Planet was fun, if a little bit repetitive. Revenge of the Savage Planet is changed to be a third-person game rather than a first-person game. Journey was a sort of like a first-person Metroidvania in some ways. And I believe Revenge is going for much the same thing, but third-person. And I believe you are moving to different planets rather than it all taking place on the same planet. And that was one of the issues with it being a bit samey, is that you were in like a small area. That was a little bit repetitive. Anyway, moving on. Then we have Imperial. I don't know how the game is pronounced. This is a hack and slash in the old school hack and slash ways. Bit of a looter thing. It's got it's a little bit of a Diablo clone in some ways. So the idea is there's this monolith in space. You've been brought in to kind of reinforce the expedition that's there. Security and what have you, but you're also there to sort of dive deeper into this monolith and figure out its secrets and what have you. And you do that by hitting things really hard with a sword or with a glaive or with a gun. I suppose you don't hit things with a gun, you shoot them with a gun. Anyway, that's kind of the gist of it. From what I've seen, the combat is pretty hectic and also pretty tough. So we're not talking Souls tough exactly. We're talking more like Returnal, I guess, kind of stuff to it. But like a melee Returnal, I guess, is kind of what we're looking at here. There's 3 different weapon classes as we're showing off here. You've got the glaive, which is like the long-handled spear kind of thing. You've got a big cannon, which is surprisingly faster than it might look. And then you have a pretty standard sword and board build as well. They all have their own different strengths and weaknesses, and so on and so forth. So yeah, from what I've seen from like streams and playtests and stuff, it seems decent. I don't know what kind of legs it will have, because a lot of the gameplay is jumping into maps with different modifiers applied to them, but the maps are the same. Like the layout is always the same, but the enemies you'll encounter and the stipulations that are applied to it are different every time. So it's not exactly a roguelike, and it's not like procedurally generated or anything, but it's more like the enemies you'll face, the numbers of different enemies you'll face. Maybe you'll fight harder enemies in one area than you would have had the last time you did it and stuff like that. I don't know what kind of legs something like that will have, basically. Anyway, moving on from Imperial, whatever. The Midnight Walk. So this is... I don't know actually if it's a Sony first party. I know Sony are publishing it, but I don't know if it's a first party thing for them. Anyway, the Midnight Walk is that's like a first person escort mission, which does not seem like a good idea. The big selling point is everything is done in kind of stop motion, like photogrammetry, handcrafted clay models, as it says here. So they're all like clay models that have been animated in the real world, and they just have those animations then applied into the video game. So photogrammetry meaning they're taking extremely high definition photographs, high definition video, and so on and so forth. I think it has like a blinking mechanic, and I know how that works on like, because it's a VR game as well. There is a flat version of the game as well. And I know how obviously the blinking mechanic is going to work in VR. You just close your eyes. The PSVR 2 has eye tracking. It knows when your eyes are closed. I don't know how the flat version is. Do you just like hold in an analog stick and that's the blinking? Anyway, so the idea is you're trying to keep this pot guy who has the flame on his head alive and get him from point A to point B, and hopefully his flame doesn't go out. That's essentially the game. But definitely the draw of the game is its art. I would think that the game itself is probably like okay. I don't know. I haven't played it. Anyway, moving on. And then Spirit of the North 2. I believe we played Spirit of the North on the channel. Or I talked about it at best. I think we played it. Anyway, so Spirit of the North, the original, was... Spirit Fox brings nature back to life thing, and it was sort of it was almost like a tourist ad for Norway in some ways. Spirit of the North 2 is just a little bit more ambitious. You're still the Spirit Fox. I think it's technically a prequel to the first game. You're Spirit Fox, and now you're also Spirit Crow. So Spirit Crow follows the Spirit Fox, but it is effectively the same type of game. It is, revitalize nature by doing odd platforming things with your fox, and now also a crow. cool. I like the first game. It's super janky. To be fair, the first game was very jank. Whether the second game will be equally as jank, I don't know. But it looks a hell of a lot better than the first game did. Anyway, Spirit of the North 2. Unfortunately, though, it is now time to talk about the worst part of video games. The video game industry. So, in a blow to platform fanboys, it turns out exclusivity is not always a good thing for people. Anyway, PS5's best-selling games last month were all from Xbox. So the top 3 selling games in both Europe and the US and Canada were all Microsoft published games. Now, it helps that Microsoft threw out a bunch of games this month, so you could almost argue that this was inevitable, considering the 3 games that they chose to put out as well. But anyway, so the console's best-selling games all came from its rival publisher. The number 1 downloaded game in Europe for April was Forza Horizon 5, which is not really a surprise. After that, Oblivion Remastered, although to be honest, I figured those would be the other way around. And then Minecraft, because Minecraft's always there. It's just always in the top. US and Canada, it's basically the same, but they're reversed a little bit. So Oblivion is at the top in US and Canada, then Minecraft, then Forza. So yeah, this whole exclusivity thing may not have been a great idea, at least for Microsoft, because there's potential they would have sold a hell of a lot more if they had brought their games to PlayStation earlier, in like the PS4 generation or the PS3 generation, and so on and so forth. Who knows? But they're certainly doing well now, and it does definitely help Microsoft's whole advertising thing of trying to turn everything into an Xbox, and now maybe it's turning the PlayStation 5 into an Xbox. This is pretty funny. It's a pretty funny meme, and it also seems to also be happening. So they've got that going for them. On top of that, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is also selling very well. It's just not in the top 10, or not in the top 5 rather. I think it is in the top 10. And then on top of that, January of this year, unsurprisingly, Call of Duty was the best-selling game on both Xbox and PlayStation. I think Sony put out the numbers themselves. Yeah, Sony even shared this themselves. Now, they didn't come out and say, hey, look, the top-selling games are all fucking Xbox games, but they didn't exactly shy away from showing it either. So you can see there, top 3 in the US and Canada, top 3 in the EU, and then we have Clair Obscur doing well. Nice. They're doing okay there. I suppose the 2 sports that are only US, really, are up a little bit higher, and they don't feature. Oh, they almost didn't feature at all. Okay, NBA is in there. They almost didn't feature at all. COD still very high up on the US. Assassin's Creed Shadows, Indiana Jones, DMC5 Special Edition. I mean, great. Great that it's up so high, but why? Why? Hang on, why is this so high as well? Maybe it was on a sale or something? I don't know. Why are they both so high? That's weird. Anyway, Days Gone Remastered, re-release and upgrade patch. Paid upgrade patch, which is gross, but here we are. This is the future everybody wanted, I guess. Cyberpunk's still selling. Hogwarts Legacy in the EU. Yeah, unfortunately, the UK, everyone's fucking buying it. First Berserker in there, nice. And Lords of the Fallen. Okay, people were on a Soulsy bend, I guess. Although, yeah, I think the deal was Lords of the Fallen had a decent sale, I think, in April. I don't know, be honest. But I'm glad that Clair Obscur is up there. I would rather Clair Obscur was up here somewhere, but it's not. But yeah, it is pretty funny from a console fanboy standpoint that Xbox is selling better on PlayStation, potentially. Anyway, and it does also highlight the fact that Sony have no fucking first-party games out. Like, the only thing they had there was the Days Gone Remastered. That's not a good look for them either. Anyway, moving on. Speaking of Microsoft and Xbox doing well, the US Appeal Court throws out the FTC's challenge against Microsoft's $69 billion acquisition of Activision Blizzard. So this is effectively the end of the FTC looking to block the merger between Microsoft and Activision, which has, of course, gone ahead. They have appealed this a couple of times, and this is almost their last recourse. This is the 9th Circuit, so the 10th Circuit is the Supreme Court. So they do still have that as an avenue, but whether they'll bother, and with the current administration, kind of don't see that happening. But anyway, US Court of Appeals has once again sided with Microsoft and ruled in favor of their side, effectively, and denied the FTC's request to block the deal that has already happened in 2023. In 2023, the Commission tried to block it. They were unsuccessful. Then at the end of the year in December, they tried to appeal it. The appeal was denied, and they again appealed it one more time up to the Ninth Circuit, and now this is the result, effectively. Jesus, took a long time to get there. The panel has held that the District Court applied the correct legal standards and did not abuse its discretion or rely on clearly erroneous findings in holding that the FTC failed to make a sufficient evidentiary showing to establish the requisite likelihood of success on the merits of its claim. That was a really long-winded way to say, you ain't got shit, more or less. The FTC were arguing that their merger with Activision would give them an unfair advantage in cloud gaming spaces. I would argue Microsoft already has an unfair advantage because Azure has a Microsoft's cloud platform, which would obviously host Xbox's cloud platform, and the fact that Microsoft is almost the de facto PC gaming platform. If Sony wanted to launch a PC gaming streaming thing, Microsoft would be in a position to block that. But acquiring Activision doesn't prevent that. Like, they were in a position to do that regardless. So yeah, I don't think they had the merits for it. And then the other thing was that, you know, they would take games that were formerly multi-platform and then restrict them to make them single-platform, which they did do with like Redfall and stuff like that. Yeah, I know, lol, Redfall. But I mean, they did technically take a game that was slated to be like for PlayStation and other platforms and said no, just Xbox. And then, of course, there was the issue that Call of Duty would end up being an exclusive to Xbox, which hasn't happened. And it certainly does seem like Microsoft, Phil Spencer, Xbox have decided that, no, we're just not doing the exclusive thing anymore. We might do a 6-month window where it's exclusive to Xbox and Game Pass, but it does seem like they're more and more leaning towards bringing their games over to PlayStation. And if it can run at the Switch, Switch 2, maybe you'll start seeing more Xbox games there as well. Like Doom is launching day one on PlayStation as well, and it is technically, since they bought Bethesda, they bought Bethesda in between Doom Eternal and Doom the Dark Ages, but Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal were both multi-platform games, and there was the concern that now that they had bought them, that Doom the Dark Ages wouldn't be available on PlayStation, and it is. So they are living up to their statement at the time. That's like, we're not going to make it exclusive because we feel we will make more money by leaving it open, and they're doing it. So the FTC don't really have a leg to stand on here. As is mentioned, the Supreme Court is always an option, but I don't think they'll bother at this point. And with the current administration, they're not going to do it. Anyway, moving on. Speaking of formerly Activision-owned and also formerly Microsoft-owned companies, Bungie, and currently PlayStation-owned, Bungie fails to provide evidence for Destiny 2 copyright lawsuit because the content is vaulted. Fucking lol. At this. It's like, congratulations, you fucked yourself over on this. So there's a lawsuit that Bungie wanted to dismiss that alleged that the Red Legion story in Destiny 2 was lifted directly from the writings of an author whose work was available on WordPress 4 years prior to the game being released. So the allegation is you stole it from me, basically. Bungie filed a motion to have the case dismissed. As they said, Martineau's work and what eventually became Destiny 2 Red Legion is demonstrably different in Destiny 2. Now, the demonstrably part is where this falls down because they can't demonstrate it. Because the content does not exist anymore because Bungie vault their stuff. They're the only online service game that doesn't keep its stuff around. As far as I'm aware, at least. So content has now been placed in the Destiny content vault where it can no longer be accessed by the players, which is bad enough because this is content they've paid for and can no longer access. And also, if you decided to, You thought, hey, I'm sometimes hearing good things about Destiny. I want to get in and play the game. Oh, I can't start the story from the beginning. I have to just jump into the middle of the story and not have any fucking clue what's going on. Yeah. Pretty much. That's what you have to do. Anyway, but even weirder, the content is no longer can be accessed by players or by Bungie itself. That's weird. That's not good. What is your content retention policy? This is bad. Like, your architecture must be not great if you can't do... Well, not their architecture necessarily, but their... Like, the fact that they can't roll it back to this point. That they don't have a code base history that they can get. So the issue that they're basically presenting is Destiny 2, as it exists now, is not capable of playing the Red Legion, the Curse of Osiris, and a bunch of other stuff, just because of the way the code base is now structured. And that is fine if you were trying to run it on like the literally most up-to-date client. Fine. Most software would have an issue, to be honest. But the fact that you don't have an internal platform that you can roll back the changes on and roll it back to the point that you need to be rolled back to demonstrably show that there's a difference and that you can dismiss this lawsuit, that does not exactly paint Bungie in a great light. Anyway, so Tyson Green, the game's director, had what's the word? Is an affidavit? Yes, affidavit for the court because they weren't able to show anything. They weren't able to do the demonstrably bit that they claimed was demonstrable. Anyway, the Red War and the Curse of Osiris legacy builds can no longer run because their outdated code is incompatible with Destiny 2's underlying operational framework. The code is not outdated. The client is further updated. It's just old code. Anyway, which has evolved considerably since the Red War and Curse of Osiris campaigns were retired. As a result, Bungie cannot feasibly provide the court with the original Destiny 2 game as it existed in 2017. They could, they just don't want to. Anyway, including the... Well, actually, if they actually can't, this is a much bigger problem for Bungie. But anyway, including the accused Red War and Curse of Osiris campaigns in any operable or reviewable form. So there basically is, take my word for it, bro, is pretty much what they're going for. Nor will Bungie be able to produce the accused campaigns in operable or reviewable form if this matter proceeds to formal discovery, so we can't prove it, more or less. And I don't know how... I don't even know how you rule that in court, because it's like, this story stuff, they lifted it entirely, they copied my story, effectively. And there's no way to prove they didn't, and there's no way to prove they did. Basically, because we can't see the content anymore, so who knows. Anyway, Bungie attempted to make up for this by instead submitting player-made videos and entries from the fan-written Destinypedia, so it's not even official stuff, explaining the lore of the now archived content, because that is what new players have, and old players who need a refresher on what's going on. They have to go to the fan site to read up on the lore, because there's no official thing for it. You would think Bungie, well, maybe Bungie do have like an official previously on Destiny, but I guess it's not good enough because they have this fan. Because it's not good enough because they didn't submit their own one. They submitted the fan one. Which, again, not painting you guys in a great light here. Anyway, the court said, no, basically this isn't sufficient. The authenticity of this can't be established. Effectively, it's all third-party stuff. None of it came from you. So we can't use it. The accusations are not aimed at third-party retellings of the story. They're aimed at the story itself. So they need to see the story as it is presented to the player. So how they're going to do that, I don't know. Bungie might be in a case here where they'll have to settle. I figure. Unless the guy, Martineau, decides to push on it. But I think they're in a position here where they're kind of fucked. Because their demonstrably different claim can't be demonstrabled. So, be kind of curious to see how this one plays out, but when I read the headline, I just fucking laughed, honestly. Because their shitty consumer practice has now come back to bite them in the arse. Good. Anyway, Speaking of shitty consumer practices that will hopefully bite them in the arse, the solution to Nintendo's ineffective battle against piracy isn't bricking people's Switches. So this is a story that came out when Nintendo have changed the Nintendo account user agreement, the EU, the EULA, all that stuff, the big massive document that everyone scrolls through and just says, I agree at the bottom. Anyway, they have changed that to effectively say that if they don't like what you've done with your Switch, they can deliberately brick it, i.e. render it unusable. So yeah, that's not great. That's pretty anti-consumer. And the whole idea with it is that if they catch you doing a piracy, they'll make your Switch pretty much useless. A paperweight, a brick. You know, that's the bricking. That's what it means. Anyway, if you are caught modifying your hardware, what does modifying your hardware mean? Don't know. Anyway. So you acknowledge that if you fail to comply with the foregoing restrictions, things like decide to use the make a Nintendo account, here's a bunch of restrictions on it, and one of them is don't modify your Switch. Anyway, you acknowledge that if you fail to comply with the foregoing restrictions, Nintendo may render the Nintendo account services, so you don't have access to the services, fine, and or the applicable Nintendo device permanently unusable in whole or in part, but in whole is a pretty bad one. So, yeah, we don't like what you're doing with this thing that you own. Because you bought it from us. You know, money was exchanged for goods. Nintendo no longer have any ownership of this device, but they're still gonna brick it. Because you agreed to it, because everybody agreed to it, because they just fucking scrolled to the bottom and said, I agree. Anyway. This is obviously a problem from just a straight up consumer ownership issue. Like, there would be a pretty massive stink if, I don't know, Spotify found you had pirated music or something and bricked your PC. Bricked your mobile phone, you know? I think many people would have an issue with that. This is almost essentially what Nintendo is doing. Maybe not. Maybe it's more like Microsoft bricking your PC if it finds out you're using an unlicensed version of Windows. Again, super illegal. And Nintendo are going to find out also super illegal, but if they're not pushed on it, if it never goes to court, again, I have maintained that the vast majority of end user license agreements aren't enforceable. But a lot of them have just never been tried in court. Anyway, John Walker here has a fairly lengthy article about why this is bad, but two, there are like legitimate reasons you would modify your Switch that Nintendo would be against, but they have like proper, like good reasons, like accessibility stuff. So you can start using controllers that Nintendo don't officially support, but they help with your like accessibility needs. Like, I don't know, you can only use one of your hands or something like that. Like, those kind of things are typically not officially supported by the platform holder, and if they are ever supported, it's like years down the line. It takes a long time for those things to ever get added. So you might want to modify your Switch for that reason. Other reasons, you might want to modify your console to run HDMI. Older retro consoles didn't have HDMI because they were built before they existed. So you have things like people modifying their N64s, their GameCubes, and what have you to take a HDMI connection instead, or to provide a HDMI connection instead. You have kind of one of the biggest things, which is what John Walker goes into here, which is the Nintendo DS. The Nintendo DS was a massive piracy platform. And it started with indie developers not being able to afford to have cartridges made for their games, because cartridges are really expensive. But they still wanted to get their game out to people. So the way they would do it instead was you would buy the ROM of their game and you would load the ROM onto a third-party cartridge. And that was probably the most popular one was the OR4 cartridge, which effectively just wrapped a micro SD card. So you could just put the ROM onto the micro SD card, put that inside the R4 cartridge, and the R4 cartridge would slot into your Nintendo DS and you could play the game. Not officially supported by Nintendo, but it was a way for indie developers to sell their game and make it playable on the Nintendo DS. All in all, making the Nintendo DS more valuable to have, because now not only can I play the official games, I can play these unofficial games from indie developers. Great. Now my DS is way more valuable. And as a result, they sold way more DSs because of it. The other issue, though, was that it weren't just like indie games you could put on these micro SD. You could put official Nintendo games on it too. So a lot of games were ripped, had their ROMs ripped of it, put on tons of sites all over the internet. You could still find tons of them. And you could download those and put those on an R4 cartridge, and now you could play an unofficial version of Mario. But the point was, you were still selling the DS. Like, there was no way to pirate a hardware thing, like a device. There was no way to do that. You still had to give Nintendo money and buy a DS. Or, I guess, buy one secondhand. But somebody originally had to buy that DS. And as a result, the DS sold loads. Like, tons. Like, it is almost the best-selling console. Like, if you discount handhelds, it's the Wii. But if you include handhelds, the Nintendo DS is really, really close. And the Wii, for similar reasons, also. Because that was also pretty easy to hack and homebrew. And also sold really well for that exact reason. Anyway, it sold very well for Nintendo. And if they had made it to the point where you couldn't have done that with the R4 cartridge, and you couldn't have made homebrew, and you couldn't have, side-loaded unofficial Mario games, it wouldn't have sold anywhere near as well. And that is obvious because the later iterations of the Nintendo DSs, the Nintendo DSi, the 3DS, and so on, did make it way harder to do that, and did not sell anywhere close to as much. Like it's half. It's less than half. Like, the fact that you could put those ROMs on, yeah, you were losing some software sales, but you were making way more in hardware. Way, way, way more. And it's kind of there's a funny anecdote here from John Walker talking about when he was working for Nintendo's national magazine, the UK national, the Nintendo magazine. Developers would send their games as ROMs and have you use an R4 to sideload them. Because they weren't going to be fucking manufacturing cartridges for you to get like a preview build. They were going to put them on the ROMs because that was super cheap. You just had to download it. Even they were taking advantage of the fact that the Nintendo DS had this ability. Even if Nintendo weren't happy about it, they were making money. And they were making things so much easier for developers. And so much better for consumers. This is now a very valuable device. Whereas if it had been locked down, not so much. Not so much a valuable device. Anyway, this next part of the article is talking about, do you actually own the Nintendo Switch? I mean, you should. Consumer law suggests that if you exchange money for it, you now own it. Now, we do have this issue with video games in that we are technically buying a rented license, something. We don't really own our games, but this is a physical thing. Same with the discs. Now, we do have the issue that a lot of Nintendo Switch 2 games are like just keys. Yeah, the game itself isn't actually on the cartridge, and that is a problem preservation-wise, but it's also a problem for consumer ownership-wise. When we have games that just have a download client on it and don't actually have the game on it, again, that is a consumer ownership problem. We don't have that issue with film DVDs. Like, the film is on the DVD. You can rip it off the DVD and it is legal to do it. If you want to play it on your PC instead, it's fine. You can do that. If you want to burn it onto a different DVD, you can do that as long as you don't sell it. It's the selling it part. It's the distribution part. That's the piracy bit. You just taking a thing you own, the CD, and ripping it to use it in a different way. That is entirely up to you, and the DVD owner and film owner, whatever, has no say on what you do with that. If you buy a basket that is advertised as a picnic basket, and you instead use it to hold all of your cables, and it is now a cable basket, the picnic basket people can't say, hey, we're going to somehow brick your basket. I don't know how they'd brick your basket, but we're going to come over and like cut a hole in it so it can't hold anything anymore. No, they're not allowed to do that. You can use it for whatever you want to use it for. And that is then effectively the question of, from Nintendo's point of view, apparently you don't own the Nintendo Switch. They do. Which, I don't know. I don't think they get to own the money and the thing that you spent the money on. That doesn't seem right. Now, if anybody makes a big enough stink about it, we'll find out. The other point that's made here is the way, and this is kind of important from a piracy standpoint, but it's like piracy is always a service problem and an access problem. It's never, I don't know, a moral ethic problem, or like it is purely the official route is either awkward, shit, really bad, overpriced, whatever, or does not exist, and the piracy version is none of those things. Like, it is always kind of funny that the official film DVD comes with a bunch of trailers and ads and shit about anti-DRM that you need to wait like a full 10 minutes before you can watch the film, almost. And the pirated one doesn't have any of that. So this is a much better product. So if we can take you back to the long time ago, from before the internet, or not before the internet necessarily, but certainly before broadband speeds. We're talking dial-up internet here. The music industry was in a situation where it was losing money on new music because people didn't want to spend so much money on singles, single CDs, single tapes, albums that weren't particularly good and was way too much money and so on, until they made it possible, and Winamp made it possible to play MP3s. So you're now able to rip your CD and play the MP3 that was on the CD instead. And suddenly, music sales, boom. People totally on board, because now they can rip it and have all of their music in one place and play it all in one go. Then they had an issue with Napster, Kazaa, LimeWire, like a bunch of other peer-to-peer network stuff that was definitely used for music piracy. But the point is, the music sales themselves went up with the piracy. The more piracy there was, the more music sales there were. And when they shut down those networks, music sales dropped off. It's almost like they were providing a much better service. Now, this has changed, obviously, because now music is really more of a streaming thing. But if Spotify is ever in a position where they start fucking around with the premium model, which they are doing, people will go back to piracy as a consumer-friendly service. We did also see it when TV and film, when internet speeds were fast enough, broadband and so on, when internet speeds were fast enough that you could now stream video. Similarly, there was a boost in sales for DVDs because now people could rip them and watch them that way, and share them across, peer-to-peer networks and what have you. But again, you saw boosted sales, and when they shut those services down, drop in sales. Netflix comes along, privacy drops because now people have an official at the time, Netflix consumer-friendly platform to watch it all on. And then when Netflix got shit, people went back to piracy again. So it's just a service issue. If the official service is good, people will stick to it. If the official service is garbage or doesn't exist, people will go to piracy. People will get the thing they want, one way or another. And like, there's another thing about how, the video game industry makes a lot of money, and most of it goes to like the small people at the top, effectively. So really, if you're going to cut down on like piracy and what have you, you would expect the money that you're going to make from it actually goes to developers, but we know it won't. Yeah. And basically the sign off is just, if you actually want to do well, you need to be better than the piracy service. That's it. To make a better service than Napster, torrenting. Make a better service than that, and you'll keep your consumers. If you don't, you won't. Anyway, moving on from that. Speaking of Nintendo being kind of shitty, Pocket Pair is changing Pal World further due to ongoing Nintendo and Pokemon lawsuits. So this is the Pal World game, which was described as Pokemon with guns, and you weren't exactly wrong to describe it that way. And Nintendo felt the same way. And they went, yeah, it really is Pokemon with guns. Lawsuit. So Palworld has a lot of things that Nintendo alleges are patent infringement. One of those was the Pokeball thing. of throw the ball, hit the creature, you capture the creature, and then you throw the ball out and the creature spawns. All of that, Nintendo patent. You shouldn't be able to patent game mechanics, IMO. You shouldn't be able to patent software. That should not be allowed, but it is. So we're in this legal shit, basically, or Pal World at least is in this legal shit, and it basically has to say we have to change it. So one thing they did get rid of already was the Pokeball thing. So that whole system is not in Pal World anymore. Now when you want to spawn your pal, they just sort of appear beside you. That's it. I don't know how you capture them. I'm not sure how they changed that. But the spawning of them, the throwing the Pokeball, the Pal Ball, the Pal Orb, I don't know what it's called in the game, isn't there anymore. And the thing they've taken out of most recently is the gliding. So up until now, if your pal was a glider, was a flyer, whatever, you could ride on their back and fly around. Not unlike some of the newer Pokemon games. That has effectively also been removed. Now you have a glider yourself. So more like a Breath of the Wild situation, I guess. And any of your pals that would have previously been gliders just sort of give you boosts and perks based on gliding. Like, I think you can glide further or longer or stuff like that. But you don't use them to glide anymore, which is kind of shit, really. But that's the position they're in. We understand that this will be disappointing for many, just as it is for us, but we hope our fans understand that these changes are necessary in order to prevent further disruptions to the development of Pal World, in order to prevent Nintendo from blocking them, essentially, from selling the game and so on. As far as I'm aware, the litigation is ongoing, but one of the demands from Nintendo was to essentially cease and desist selling Pal World. And the Pal World developers are somewhat getting around this by just cutting out the alleged things that are patent infringement. So they haven't agreed that it's patent infringement, basically. But they're taking it out of the game for now so that they can keep selling it. And that people can keep playing it, basically. Anyway, everyone here at Pocket Pair, I was trying to remember the name of the developer, everyone here at Pocket Pair was disappointed that this adjustment had to be made, and we fully understand that many players feel the same frustration, unfortunately, as the alternative would have led to an even greater deterioration of the gameplay experience, i.e. no gameplay. For players, it was determined that this change was necessary, and the rest of the article is just summing up the lawsuit up until now. But basically Nintendo have said, patent infringement, don't sell our game, and give me lots of money. And Pocket Pair have said no. But we will change these things so that the courts won't step in and block them from selling the game until the lawsuit can be settled, which is what they want to avoid. So this isn't them agreeing to yes, it was patent infringement. This is them trying to prevent the court from blocking the sale of the game. We'll see if it works out for them, and depending on how the lawsuit works out, they might re-implement those things. We'll see. Anyway, speaking of, I don't know, I don't have a segue for this one. Anyway, Starbreeze acquires publishing rights to Troubled Payday 3, says move will accelerate development roadmap. So we did have a story recently how the people at Starbreeze had kind of changed leadership. They were looking to take things in a different direction, and it seems like one of those directions was to become self-publishing for Payday 3. Now, I imagine this would allow them to make changes quicker, because they don't have to run things by the publisher, basically. It might allow them to sell the game at a lower cost, or a lower price. The publisher mightn't have been willing to drop to another price, and if you're self-publishing, you get to decide how much you're gonna sell the game for, and so on. So I imagine it just allows them a little bit more agility for this kind of stuff. Anyway, they have acquired the publishing rights from PlayOn. This will allow them to accelerate content development and pursue broader business opportunities. So we're talking about the disastrous Payday 3 launch, which it didn't launch well. There were matchmaking issues. It was an online-only kind of thing, and it was a really long time until the first patch came out. The first patch took ages. And at that point, the player count had dropped significantly, and it did seem like the player base basically moved back to Payday 2. This is not a great sign. Anyway, their CEO at the time was booted. They got a new leadership team in, and this is effectively, we're essentially seeing the fruits of the leadership team endeavors now. Starbreeze has announced it's issuing new shares in order to effectively pay off PlayOn, to buy them out of the publishing contract agreement. How much that's going to cost them, I guess we'll find out, or we won't find out actually, because it is a publicly traded company, so the shareholders should at least know how much they paid PlayOn. But I guess we have to wait for their earnings report or something like that. So Starbreeze are obviously still working on Payday 3. They are working on a Dungeons & Dragons game. How that's going to work, I don't know. Are they going to play it like a Left 4 Dead, or like a Vermintide, a Warhammer whatever tide type thing? I mean, I could see like a 4-player Dungeons & Dragons thing, like not like a Baldur's Gate. Like it's obviously going to end up being a real-time thing, which hasn't exactly worked out well for D&D in the past. I guess we'll see. We'll see how it works out for them. Anyway, it's bold strategy, Cotton. All right, last thing. This is actually kind of a follow-up to a story we did last week, which was Giant Bomb. A lot of the leadership had basically said fuck off to Fandom. Fandom were looking to take Giant Bomb in a direction that the workers did not want it to go in, and they decided to just jump ship and say, fine, Fandom, fuck off, we're gonna leave. No, we've done a complete turnaround. So Fandom have in fact sold Giant Bomb back to the longtime staffers, Jeff Grubb, Jeff Bakalar, Dan Rickard, Mike Minotti, and Jan Ochoa. Ochoa? Don't know. So they revealed at PAX East, which was over the weekend, that, yeah, Giant Bomb is now owned by the people who make Giant Bomb. The workers will own the means of production. We love it. We love a bit of socialism. And it would not have been communism, and it would not have been possible without the speedy efforts of Fandom. So, I mean, they have to play a little bit nice here. Of Fandom and our mutual agreement on what's best for fans and creators. The future of Giant Bomb is now in the hands of our supporting community, who've always had our backs no matter what. We'll have a lot more to say about what this looks like soon, but for now, everyone can trust that all the support we receive goes directly to the team. So no longer will your subscription to Giant Bomb, if you're paying a subscription to Giant Bomb, you know, half of it going to Fandom, or probably more than half of it going to Fandom, and only like a very piddling amount going to the actual people who make it. Hopefully it will be all of it going to the people who make it. So Giant Bomb will be joining the ranks of things like Aftermath, Second Wind. We were talking about before how like worker owned co-ops effectively seem like it does seem like the only kind of viable option that isn't SEO, generative AI slop. That seems to be the two things we're going to be looking at. You can have the Gen AI, SEO shit pumping out garbage, and then we'll have the worker-owned ones that are probably hanging on by a thread money-wise, but at least the stuff they're putting out is good and, you know, human stuff. Anyway, financial details of the deal were not disclosed, so we don't know how much it cost, basically. We may never know how much it costs. And this is kind of a rehash of what happened. So earlier in the month, the Giant Bomb live stream effectively just stopped live streaming. The podcast of last week was published and then very quickly taken down. And this is alleged because the hosts were like taking the piss out of Fandom, basically. Because Fandom were saying, oh, you can't swear and you have to like big up our sponsors and shit like that. And everything's like Giant Bomb, if you've listened to them, will know that's not their thing. And entirely different from the style of content that Giant Bomb has built its reputation on. So following that, Jeff Grubb announced he was going to leave. Dan Rickard also announced he wouldn't be on Giant Bomb again. A bunch of people said they wouldn't contribute to it and so on and so forth. But a week later, things have gone basically the opposite way. And now Giant Bomb is owned by the people who actually work on Giant Bomb. Good stuff. Okay, last thing we're going to look at here. The World Video Game Hall of Fame striking while the iron is hot and adding Tamagotchi and Quake to the Hall of Fame. It's like, you're kind of taking your time here. Anyway, this started, I think, in 2018, the Video Game Hall of Fame. And this month they've added, this year, actually, I think they only add things by year. Anyway, they've added Quake, N64 GoldenEye, which I don't know why that wasn't already there. Defender, which some people may not remember, 1981. It's a long time ago. Actually older than me. It was one of the earliest side-scrolling spaceship shooter things. So like Space Invaders, but good. Anyway, and then the Tamagotchi, which again, I mean, they did get a resurgence recently, so maybe the kids do know what a Tamagotchi is. But in case you've forgotten, Tamagotchi was a handheld LCD screen, so black and white screen, and it had a little guy on it, little Tamagotchi, and you were responsible for his health. You had to feed him, you had to water him, you had to clean up his shit, and you had to play with him, and so on. And it had a real tactile nature to it. Tactile maybe isn't the right word, but it had a real sense of like connection to the creature. Like, I remember the first time mine died, and I was like, sad, you know, because I kept him alive for a whole week, and he had died because I forgot about him under my bed. Anyway, he had died. So it was real sad. But also at the time, and it's pointed out in this article actually by Nick Rubin, Tamagotchi came out at a time when video games were very much like violent shooters and like brawlers and stuff like that. And there weren't many of the cozy games that we kind of see now, like Stardew Valleys and so on. Those kind of games didn't really exist, but then a bunch of them that were like super influential came out at the same time. So we had Harvest Moon came out at the same time as the Tamagotchi, and Harvest Moon is a massive influence on Stardew Valley. And then Pokemon, which I mean, Pokemon does have like a combat element to it, but it is very much about like making friends with the Pokemon, right? That is very much what the game is also about. Making friends with the people. Yeah, you're battling them, but it's like it's a friendly kind of thing, you know? It's like competition. It's not guts and gore and shooting and headshots and stuff, which is what video games very much were at the time. And it did kind of, it didn't usher it in exactly, but it did add like, hey, games don't all have to be Mortal Kombat clones, because there are a lot of Mortal Kombat clones then too as well. So yeah, I think it's a good addition. They fucking took their time though. But they've also added The Last of Us, so we can't exactly say they have good taste. Anyway, the inductees currently, so the recent ones were added: Defender, GoldenEye, Quake, Tamagotchi. They've added some interesting ones. Ultima, like one of the earliest RPG type games. SimCity, again, the de facto city simulator type game. The original Resident Evil, like, it's not quite the first horror game, but it is certainly one of the earliest and probably one of the most influential ones at this point. Myst, again, it took video games in a different direction. It was very, puzzle oriented. It was shit, IMO, but it again took video games in a different direction. They weren't all the same kind of thing. It was very different at the time it came out. Asteroids is like, it's not quite the first video game, but 1978, it might be. It's close. It could well be the first video game. Wii Sports got a lot of people who weren't into video games into video games. It's very much a reason why the Wii sold so well. You could bring it out for people who had never played video games before, and they could jump in easy because the controls were just do what you would do in real life, and it'll work. The Last of Us. Don't know why that's there. Okay, my personal dislike of The Last of Us aside, it is a pretty good showcase for like the technological ability of video games to tell a story, even if I think it's not a very good story. Anyway, Computer Space is like, again, it's not quite like the first console, but it's close. So like 1970 is when it came out, but it kind of started in like 62, 60s and stuff like that. Yeah, it's like one of the very first, and I think Asteroids is actually on it. Or like a prototype Asteroids Space War, I think is a similar thing to it. Barbie Fashion Designer, you might think that's why is that there? Up until Barbie Fashion Designer, there weren't necessarily video games aimed directly at girls. Like, girls played them, sure. You have girls playing Street Fighter with me, like, but a game that was marketed. Now, okay, Barbie, it's not exactly a great game to be like, it is very gendered, but up until then, it was very much male. Young boys is effectively was the marketing for video games, so it was a pretty big deal at the time. Civilization, there's a reason it's still going. Again, if SimCity is like the de facto city simulator, Civilization is the de facto world diplomacy simulator thing. Pac-Man, specifically Miss Pac-Man, and I think that's again just for like the female hero effectively, but Pac-Man kind of has stood the test of time, I think. Maybe, who knows, that weird edgy Pac-Man that's on, what's it called, shadow something. Zelda Ocarina of Time, it is almost the prototype third-person action-adventure game. Like, so many games have copied it, because it was just, yeah, you've nailed it. That's exactly what it should be. Dance Dance Revolution. Games don't have to have a controller. You can play games with your feet. Again, pretty, as the title would suggest, pretty revolutionary at the time. Space Invaders. Yeah, of course. Like, Space Invaders is a shit game, as far as I'm concerned, but it's hard to say that it didn't, like, mainstream video games, really. Plus, it's shorthand for a lot of video game stuff. And at the time when it came out, or not even at the time when it came out, but like 10 years later, you would be hearing about it referenced in like popular culture, popular films, stuff like that, TV shows. People were talking about it. Grand Theft Auto 3, again. The prototype third-person action-adventure thing. We got Ocarina of Time, and we've got Grand Theft Auto 3. Like, how many GTA clones came out after GTA 3? Like, it's done some stuff to the video game industry. I guess we'll see. Oregon Trail, You Have Died of Dysentery. Again, it's shorthand in video game community, so of course it has to be there. The Legend of Zelda. I mean, if Ocarina of Time is going to be there, then yes, the original The Legend of Zelda has to be in there as a seminal, this is how you do an adventure game, basically. The Sims, for the exact same reason that SimCity and Civilization are in there. And again, it was the first, and is in some ways the de facto lifestyle simulator game. Sonic the Hedgehog, I assume Mario is in there somewhere as well. I'm sure he was one of the earliest ones. We're going back to 2016. Okay, I thought it only started in 2018, but it's actually gone back much further. Sonic the Hedgehog, mascot stuff. I mean, Mario was obviously around, but Sonic kind of made the jump as more of a mascot, hedge Scott, than Mario. At the time when they came out, Sonic was a more easily recognizable character. You have to remember that Mario, like, pixel-wise, is not exactly easy to spot. You know, he's like a little tiny man, and like 2 pixels are his head, and 1 pixel of like mustache. Like, he doesn't exactly stand out, even if you could recognize the game immediately. You may not recognize him emblazoned on a cereal box and stuff like that. Whereas Sonic, it's pretty easy to do. Like, and again, made it a mainstream thing. Tetris, it's been around since it fucking launched. Like, of course, it kind of has to be there. There's Mario, of course. Super Mario Bros. Also been around since the very beginning. Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man is in there. Again, Pac-Man has been... he hasn't exactly stood the test of time as Mario and Sonic have, and arguably if Sonic has stood the test of time. But again, it is like a shorthand for a maze puzzle type game. World of Warcraft, when it came out, again, started the same kind of thing as GTA 3 did, which was, hey, here's a bunch of MMO clones. But yeah, WoW has still kind of shown how you do an MMO. Now, I would argue Final Fantasy XIV has taken over from that. But at the time, yeah, it really did just change, because now it was massively multiplayer games, hundreds of people all playing together. The idea that like the whole world could be playing a game together was like pretty nuts at the time. What was like the first game they added? Pong. That doesn't make sense. Doom, it runs on everything. Again, like a lot of these are like no-brainers. Like, of course it's there. Pong, the first video game, potentially. Does it have the year of Pong on this? It actually doesn't. I would be curious. I mean, I could go look it up on Wikipedia or whatever, but anyway. Final Fantasy 17. 17? Wow, we're going really far ahead. Final Fantasy 7. I had 14 on my brain. Yeah, like, I'm pretty happy it's there because it is my favorite game, and I would say, you know, it should have been the first one inducted, and it might have been the first one inducted. No, 2018 it wasn't. Yeah, like, video games didn't have such an in-depth, complex story and characters at the time. Now, you could argue Final Fantasy 6. Yes, they did have those kind of things, but it wasn't as... As to say, it didn't have the same kind of penetration, we'll say. Because the original earlier Final Fantasy games, well, a lot of them didn't make it out of Japan in the first place. And then the first 4, we'll say, barely have a story in the first place. 5, sort of, maybe, if you squint, has a bit of a story to it. 6, I haven't played yet. We're getting to it, and I know it does have a pretty complex story. But I think it came out at, like, the tail end of the Super Nintendo, so... I'm not sure how much market penetration it had outside of Japan, but Final Fantasy VII did. Like, it was marketed very well, it got a lot of eyes on it, it was in a lot of the video game magazines, certainly made an impression on a lot of people, and then when people played it, they're like, hey, video games don't have to be shoot the gun thing, you know, they can have complex characters, and they can have etc, etc, and the amount of developers making RPGs, making JRPGs, making Clair Obscur, etc., will say, yeah, I'm into this because I play Final Fantasy 7 or 6 or 8. It's gonna be one of them. Where in the World, Carmen Sandiego? This was another kind of, not exactly aimed at girls, but played a lot by, for obvious reasons, played a lot by girls, but played a lot by boys as well. And it was also teaching people as well. It's like the most popular education game, and I don't think anything has come close. Pokemon Red and Green, for some reason, and not just Pokemon. I don't know why, but specifically Red and Green. Yeah, this was everywhere. Everybody was playing this. You had a Game Boy, you had Pokemon Red or Green. That was just it. You just had it. It was in the Game Boy almost all the time. StarCraft, potentially the first RTS. Command & Conquer, I think, might predate it. Or Warcraft, rather, might predate it, even. I think the deal with StarCraft was more that it just kind of took over the RTS scene for a long time. Like, it wasn't that other games weren't being played or anything. It's just, if you were saying, I like RTSs, it was StarCraft. Like, it's almost certainly it was that one. Halo, again, I don't think it's particularly great, but it's hard to say that it hasn't had a massive impact on first-person shooters. Like, the whole energy recharging energy shield is Halo. Like, that's where it comes from. Like, that was the game that did it. Putting an in-depth story into it. Again, whatever you think about the story, first-person shooters specifically weren't typically known for their stories. But the Halo story, well, some people like it. Again, whatever. But I wouldn't exactly argue it didn't have a huge impact on the video game industry. Microsoft Flight Sim, again, trying to turn not games into like entertainment exactly, but how to show how games or video game software, video interactive software, I guess, doesn't necessarily have to be fighting, shooting, yada yada yada. Again, there's another reason why Flight Sim should be in there, and that's been around for quite a long time. Street Fighter 2, yeah, it's the reason we have fighting games. Like, that's it. I don't think we need to talk about any more about it. Are there more? Oh, God, we're going to keep going. Okay, I wasn't expecting them to have so many. I was expecting them to have, like, 8 at most. Alright, we're just going to go through these quickly and just go, like, yes or no. Animal Crossing, yeah, again, it's a video game that shows it doesn't have to be all about violence. Donkey Kong was in basically every arcade all the time, and again, pretty much started the platforming genre. Minecraft, your kids are playing it, and their kids will probably play it, and probably their kids too, and now it's a film series. King's Quest, much like Ultima, it was a very early, here's how you do an adventure game. Centipede is actually a game I don't know. I actually don't know what Centipede is. Players use a trackball. That's probably why it's here. Players use a trackball to control a cannon at the bottom of a screen and attempt to shoot a centipede zigzagging through a field of mushrooms. This sounds like missile defense. That's what it sounds like, but it's probably the tracker ball is why it's in there. Bejeweled Match 3. There's so many mobile games that are using this just basic puzzle thing. Yeah. It makes sense why it's still there. Super Mario Kart. Again, we're up to Mario Kart 9 now. Like, it's, again, every kart game is just, hey, let's compare it to Mario Kart and see how favorably it does. And almost, without fail, it does not live up to Mario Kart. Again, racing games, parties, getting people together. Lots of people would play Mario Kart. Good stuff. Mortal Kombat, for the same reason the Street Fighter is there. Mortal Kombat the Mortal Kombat Street Fighter competition, we'll say, led to a lot of really good fighting games, but it led to a lot of like changes and variations and people trying new things to stand out, and a lot of them were thrown away, but a lot of them also made their way into later fighting games that would then also have to try something new to stand out, and so on and so forth. There were so many Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter clones that the fighting game genre for a while got so big that people were like, another fucking fighting game, are you serious? You know, we're getting there now with like live services and open worlds and stuff like that, but there were so many fighting games. It was ridiculous. But yeah, the competition between Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter, and it was effectively mechanics or pageantry. You know, mechanics, Street Fighter had way beaten. You could just do way more stuff with Street Fighter. And as the series progressed, you're getting like EX meters, you're getting hyper meters, you're getting super duper moves and stuff like that. And then Mortal Kombat is kind of getting more characters, ridiculous storyline, crazy fatalities and stuff like that. They kind of branched off in different directions. But Mortal Kombat's mechanics never really, like, they got a run button at one point, and that was kind of it. Solitaire, it is on every PC in the world. Like, again, it makes sense why it's there. Wow, we're still going. Okay. Colossal Cave Adventure is a kind of... How to explain it? Well, one, it's on a cassette, so it should probably tell you how old the game is. It's kind of like a very old adventure game, very old RPG, where you would type in what you wanted to do, which was like go left, pick up key, use key in door west, like stuff like that. And you would have to type it out. And figuring out what exactly the game would respond to when you type those things out was like half the fun. Does it accept like shit pants? And no, it didn't. But find out the one game that does let you do it and be like, yes, I love this game. But again, a very early, like super early idea of a video game. And I'm not sure if like the later Colossal Cave Adventures did have like art to it as well. But I think some of the earlier ones were straight up just text. But they had like replayability. They were somewhat of a choose your own adventure kind of thing, but without choose your own adventure books were kind of easy to cheese because you would just leave your finger in the branching point and go, well, that didn't work out. I'm going to go back here. And in the game, you couldn't really do that. Anyway, Tomb Raider, again, Lara Croft was like a big video game mascot for a long time. Put video games into the mainstream. Even people who don't play video games knew who Lara Croft was. Like, again, same reason. Space War is like prototype Asteroids, and Asteroids is already in there, so why not? Why shouldn't Space War be there? That's like 1960s. Fucking hell, that was a long time ago. And then John Madden Football's in there for some reason. I don't know why. Probably because this is a US-based thing. Anyway, I mean, the same reason. It's a sports game. We have again, we've had a lot of games that are showing, hey, games don't just have to be violent, power fantasies. They can be other things like sports. And now there are tons of sports games. And they make EA way too much money. Anyway, that went on way longer than I was expecting it to. Because it turns out they have a lot more games in there. Anyway, that was your news. And maybe a trip down memory lane somewhat for the 5th to the 11th of May, 2025. Yeah, Mafia: The Old Country, I was kind of expecting an open world slog. That they were just going to do Mafia 4 effectively. And just go further with what they were doing with Mafia 3, but I guess they have like listened to the feedback from that, and there was a lot of superfluous stuff. There was a lot of stuff that people didn't really want from Mafia. Mafia was people were not like fans were not happy that it was going down the GTA route of turning it into a big open world, map porn Ubisoft thing. It's like that's not what we wanted. We wanted like a tight story Mafia thing. And that seems to be where they're going back with Mafia 4. So that's pretty good. Like, that's actually heartening to see that they're, one, that they actually listen to the, their consumers, but two, that that Take-Two are allowing them to do it. And I guess Take-Two are like, we already have GTA 6, we don't need another GTA thing. Or do I have that wrong? Are 2K and Take-Two the same company? I'm starting to think maybe they're not the same company. I feel like they are. I feel like Take-Two make the 2K games. They are, right? Shit, I don't know now. I'm fucking second guessing myself. But it would make sense, because they're like, hey, we already have GTA 6 and GTA Online, and we don't really need another GTA thing that isn't GTA. So sure, let Mafia be go back to the original Mafia game. I Am Ripper seems like it'll be up my alley. I kind of like the look of it, and I like these kind of slower, walking simulator type things, but I like those kind of games, so it's fine. Pigface is probably a game I will watch rather than play, because twitchy first-person shooters, I'm not good at them anymore. I don't have the reflexes anymore to play them. I'm too old, officially, to play those kind of games, or not play them on, like, super mega baby easy mode. So I'll just watch somebody play it instead. What else were we looking at? Chronicles of the Wolf. Like an old school Simon's Quest thing. Yep, sign me up. Sounds good. And the Game Pass for May seems like it's going to be pretty good. Doom: The Dark Ages, Revenge of the Savage Planet, which we're looking at here. Culebra, Souls in Limbo. Again, I thought it was a fun kind of Spiritfarer type thing. I think there were a bunch of other games attached to it as well. And then new releases. Revenge is a little bit expensive right now, so I might wait for that to come down a bit. But otherwise, I do want to play more of it. Spirit of the North. I liked Spirit of the North 1. It's very janky. So hopefully they've like kind of smoothed it out a little bit. But again, it's a bit like Journey, a little bit. It plays a little bit like that. At least the first one did. I'm just going to assume the sequel does as well. I don't remember what the other two games were. That's not sounding good. What were the other two games? Imperial and the Midnight Walk. Yeah, I don't know. Again, the Midnight Walk is a bit expensive. It's like €50 or something. It's like for something that I feel is probably going to be a pretty short game. I can't. Again, the art's really nice. Like I do appreciate the clay models and the effort they've gone to do it. But €50 is a bit much. And Imperial, I need to see more gameplay of it, because I don't feel like it's kind of map system where they just tweak the components and the stipulations of it. It has like length to it, or has depth to it rather. Yeah, like I just need to see more people playing it. Industry bullshit wise, the fact that Bungie can't demonstrably show that the story is different because of their vaulting bullshit. Love it. We love to see them find out. We don't like seeing them fuck around, but we love to see them find out. All right, anyway, Nintendo's bricking policy, it being buried in the EULA, don't think they'll be able to enforce it. One thing that is curious is how they would intend to implement it. Because does it mean that the Switch and the Switch 2 have a kill switch in them that can be remotely triggered? Because if it does, not just Nintendo can access that. Other third parties, nefarious operators could also brick your Switch. That doesn't seem like something we should start introducing to consumer electronics, does it? So yeah, I would be interested to know how Nintendo would do it. just so we can sue the shit out of them for doing it. But like, prepare, I guess, for it. I don't know. I don't see Nintendo ever actually doing it, but I could see them like banning your account and stuff like that. Sure, it's shitty, but I mean, you don't own your account technically, but you definitely own the, you know, the hard physical object that you're holding in your hands and you spent money for it. Like, hard physical object, Eric? Really? Anyway, I'm gonna move on before I have any more innuendos. Xbox games reaching the top of the PlayStation charts. Pretty funny. It's pretty funny. It does highlight that, one, the exclusivity thing was always dumb. But it also highlights that Sony really aren't putting out anything. Because there aren't any Sony first parties up there. It's like just Days Gone, and that's a remaster. It just really highlights how all in they were on the live service stuff. And now that they've cancelled so many of those games, they have nothing. We've Ghost of Yotai at some point later in the year, but this year, what have they put out? Concord? That doesn't count because they unreleased it. Yeah, it's not. It's actually, it's a very bad look for Sony. Really, as funny as it is a very bad look for them. Anyway, I'm gonna leave it there. Off stream, I am still playing Blueprints. And I said last week that I wasn't really getting the hype. I am now getting the hype. Yeah, it does require you to play it maybe a little bit more than it should for you to like get into the idea that there are actually like mysteries and puzzles and secrets like all over the place. Like rooms that I thought I had scoured. Like, oh, I'm done with. Oh, it's this room again. I've already done everything in this room. It's like, no, there's still stuff in here I haven't done. So that's pretty cool. I have hit the credits at this point, but from people who have played the game and gotten to the credits and played afterwards will tell you that like that's the start, basically. Now the real game begins in some ways. Anyway, so I'll probably going to be playing that for a little while longer. Anyway, I'm going to head off. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.